confirm that I am live. Thank you so much. Hi, YouTube. Hello. Good morning. I know it's a little earlier than we usually gather. Just want you all to know I will probably be doing 2 lives today. This live first is really mainly for people who are interested in civics and civic engagement. Last night, I had an opportunity to attend a community forum that was organized by Black Brooklyn. And by Black Brooklyn, I mean old Black Brooklyn, right? It was these was not young Black Brooklyn. This was old Black Brooklyn, elder type Black Brooklyn folks who were organizing this event. And it was an event, a community forum where Democratic mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani appeared and was invited to come and engage. There was a Black agenda that the organizers had put together. I don't know how many Black people were a part of formulating the agenda. I know the agenda was dope. I know that they were concerned about housing. They were concerned about education. They did a really good job. And these are old school organizers. So it makes sense that this would have been a packed room, which it was. Shout out to the Major Owens Health and Wellness Center, which hosted this event. It was absolutely phenomenal. And Zoran Mandani appeared, talked with the people, stayed for, maybe just under an hour, and then had deputies that were made available to continue taking questions from the audience, which I appreciated. I got to ask a question because in years past, I was a member of the New York City Racial Justice Commission. And as a result of the work that we did under our then chair, Jennifer Jones Austin, we were able to get 3 ballot proposals on the New York City ballot, all of which got passed into law because voters came out and voted for them to the tune of over 60% in favor for each of those. And those 3 ballot proposals were designed to put the city on a path towards racial equity, right? And that was because there was an acknowledgement. One of the proposals was that there should be an acknowledgement in our city constitution of the racist history that formulated New York City, and that proposal passed. The second proposal was to create a Office of Racial Equity that was basically going to require every single city agency to have a forward-looking plan as to how they were going to address racial inequities, and that forward-looking plan was going to be based on a previous plan, which is going to be a backwards-looking plan that assessed how you did with your racial equity distribution of resources. So if you're the sanitation department and you are quick to clear the streets on the Upper West Side where the rich white people go, but then we look at your records and find out you might maybe get to some of the streets where the Black people live, like in East New York and Brownsville, well, then that's a racially inequitable distribution of resources that we all pay into the tax pool for. And so once we have that backwards looking report that says how you're doing, what's your baseline, your next year, you're going to have a forward looking report that tells us what you plan to do to address the inequities of your past baseline. That proposition passed into law. And then there was a third, which is a true cost of living measure, which essentially says that in New York City, there is an understanding that according to the federal numbers, you as a family of 4 should be able to get by and have all your needs met if you make in $50,000 or less. And we argued for, and were able to get passed into the law, a true cost of living, because we understand that if you're a family of 4 in New York City, you need closer to $110,000, $115,000 in order to have all of your needs met equitably. And so all of those measures passed. And so I was able to ask a question about that. It was a phenomenal engagement. I want to say thank you so much to the elders who organized it, former Assembly Member Roger Green, Joe Coelho, just phenomenal work. Absolutely. Esmeralda Simmons, D12 movement was present. It was just really, really well done. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because there is a growing concern, or there had been a growing concern. I think forums like last night did a lot to help alleviate that. But there had been a concern within several segments of the Black community about fears and concerns about Zoran Mamdani. Now, I'm not even going to hold you. This brother, I think his platform is attractive as hell. He is a New York State Assembly member. Zoran Mamdani is. He is a Democratic socialist. That's something that scares a lot of older Black people. But he's a Democratic socialist who's running for mayor. He was born in Uganda, raised in New York City. And so, when you think about that, like his middle name is Kwame, right? He could be riding on his bona fides of just like his name and the fact that he got a story to tell, kind of like his opponent. But what he basically has is also receipts, which we got to hear about last night. He, and in his legislative efforts in the past, has gone on a hunger strike because taxi drivers were going on a hunger strike, and they were successfully able to achieve more than $450 million in transformative debt relief. He won over $100 million in the state budget for increased subway services, and also was able to successfully secure a fare-free bus pilot program, which Black New Yorkers are benefiting from right now, organizing New Yorkers to defeat what they call a proposed dirty power plant. And so he is running on affordability. And the reason I wanted to have this mini conversation with y'all about civics is that a lot of times in our community, we are not necessarily thinking through some of the decisions that we might be making electorally. And I was speaking with an elder a couple of weeks ago who is one of those elders who did not vote for Zoran Mamdani in the New York City primary, voted instead for Andrew Cuomo, because even though Andrew Cuomo, who we all know never liked having Black leadership around him, we know even from Eric Adams' campaign, who had a wonderful cartoon out about Andrew Cuomo. Every time Andrew Cuomo has had an opportunity to engage in black leadership, he has worked to destroy their power and capacity. We know that under the leadership of Andrew Cuomo, when he was the governor, that black New Yorkers lost 200,000 of us because there are 200,000 fewer of us thanks to his policies. We know that thanks to his policies, that's the reason the MTA is in the disastrous position that it's in. And yet, as I was talking to this black elder, the black elder was concerned because he didn't know who Zoran Mamdani is, and he's a part of the Democratic Socialists, and that concerned this elder. And I asked the elder, I said, well, has Zoran Mamdani promised you something that, like, you think he should not do? And the elder said, no, I think all his promises are good. I just don't think he's going to be able to accomplish any of them because I ain't never seen anybody be able to accomplish all those promises. And so I asked the elder, let's say that Zoran Mamdani fails. Zoran Mandani is running on free buses. He's running on freezing rents for rent-stabilized apartments. He's running on creating a Department of Community Safety so that we actually invest in community safety as opposed to solely investing in policing. He's running on no-cost childcare. He's running on city-owned grocery stores. He's running on housing equity programs, getting rid of bad landlords. He's running on things that black people say we want. And yet this elder was saying, I know, I like what he's promising. I just don't think he's going to be able to do it. And I said, you know what, elder? Let's say he fails. Let's say this mayoral candidate fails at everything that he has promised. He's not able to make a single one of the campaign promises that he had in effort. I said, let's say that's the position between him and his opponent, Andrew Cuomo, who we know has a legacy of destroying the capacity of black voters, who we know sat on $20 million that was supposed to be distributed to nonprofit organizations so that we would be able to get out a census vote that would keep our numbers up. And as a result of Andrew Cuomo sitting on that money, we basically had a situation where we lost an entire congressional seat. And I'm a little offended by that one personally, because when he announced his $20 million, I was the one who introduced him because I was assured that that money was going to make its way to the nonprofit organizations that needed it. It did not. So I asked this elder, I said, sir, let's say Zoran Mamdani fails at everything. Who is going to be in the best decision to decide all of the other things that a mayor is going to have to consider? Because, and here's where the civics lesson is, and I think this is really important for black voters no matter where you're at, even though this is a New York City conversation in some ways as it pertains to the facts. Elected officials are put in the position of being able to decide anything, right? They get to decide what to do with the education budget. They get whether you're going to invest in good schools or not, or if you're going to invest in good schools for everybody or just center the needs of the wealthy. And I said a little bit of this on a live that I did last night on Instagram. Once you are an elected official, you get to decide how you're going to approach healthcare. And are you going to approach it in a way that's going to center the needs of healthcare companies and corporations? Or are you going to approach healthcare in a way that's going to center the needs of those who are sick? Are you going to, when you get an opportunity to decide where to invest transportation, are you going to do it in a way that's going to center the Upper West Side, where the wealthy white people live, or are you going to do it in a way that's going to center all of us? You get to decide who's going to get the good grocery store investments versus not, who's going to get the good school investments versus not, who's going to get the good healthcare and the good transportation and the good libraries, who's going to get any of the resources that elected officials are hired with our votes to distribute. Because politics is simply a very simple thing. Politics is the science of distributing resources. Sometimes the resources is access to a ballot. Sometimes the resources is a fair housing program. Sometimes the resources is deciding whether or not you're going to give the NYPD a $12 billion budget as opposed to $11 billion budget, which will continue to keep them locked in a position where they have more money in their policing department than often many countries have in their entire military army. And so when we are choosing a candidate, yes, look at what it is that they are promising to do. But then ask yourself, between these candidates, which of these candidates will either help my community the most at a time that they have to decide, or hurt my community the least at a time that they have to decide? Which of these candidates is either going to lean in a direction of equity as opposed to leaning in a direction of developers? And considering the opponent, as I was talking with this elder, has basically a legacy of centering developers, a legacy of centering policies that are destroying black people's communities and ability to stay in this city and in this state, a legacy of withholding access to power if that power was supposed to be held by a black hand. I had to ask the elder, what are you really afraid of? Because it doesn't sound like what you're saying you're afraid of, you're really afraid of. And so I want us, as we're engaging in election season, because we got an election happening in New York City, New Jersey, I believe y'all early voting is, I got to find out when y'all early voting starting. I think it's now. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But you're voting for an entire whole ass governor. You got Mikey Sherrill, who is a Democrat, who is somebody who basically got in a lot of trouble when she was it West Point, because she wouldn't snitch on her fellow people who were at school with her, who had cheated on some things. She didn't cheat, but she wouldn't snitch on them. But you got the Republicans running whole ass campaigns about how she's a dishonest broker. When you got Jack Ciattarelli, who is a Republican, who is like MAGA Nazi officiated. Like, I don't understand what the reason that people are struggling with this is, but we have very clear choices that have to be made. There are elections happening right now. Virginia, you all have an election happening right now. We do not need to approach elections as if they are going to snap their fingers, be they melanated or otherwise, and solve all the problems. The question is, what is going to be their guiding philosophy when they have to make decisions, when they have to decide which interest to center? Do you want somebody who has a multi-decade history of centering policies that are destroying our ability to thrive in this community? Or do you want to give the guy who has at least got a history of actually going on hunger strikes and doing the hard work of getting difficult legislation passed, even if he can't win everything? I actually think I need to put this in an op-ed. What if Zoran Mandani wins and still fails? How worse off would we as a New York City community be? These are questions that I think we need to sit with, and I encourage all of you who have elders and young people in your communities who are thinking about who to vote for, walk through the steps. Ask them to consider the impact of people's past and the receipts that they bring to the table, and then make a decision. Because the last thing we need to be doing is voting on name recognition, particularly when the name recognition is masking a fact that the person carrying that name has done very little to support the needs of Black communities other than what he needed to do in order to get their votes, because we weren't having these sorts of conversations. We got to get ready to go to commercial.